After my previous video on whetstones, some of you might be out there combing the internet looking for a whetstone of your own, and you're probably confused by all the options that are out there, the different types, the different grits. You just don't know what to buy. Well, hopefully this video will clear things up for you. First off, just a fun fact for you. A lot of people think when you say the word whetstone, that wet means the actual wetting of the stone or the lubricating of the stone. It's actually not that. W-H-E-T, the word wet means to sharpen. So it's a sharpening stone. So there are two general types of stones, natural stones and artificial stones. Also important to note that sharpening stones need to be lubricated somehow. You have two types of lubrication, which comes down to water lubricated or oil lubricated, water stones versus oil stones. Personally, I think water stones are a little better. You don't need to have oil on hand. And water stones will completely dry and they have no residue, no cleanup. Oil stones will always kind of hold that oil, which makes it more messy. It's a little harder to transport, and you sort of need to keep it by itself. You don't want to get it on your clothes because it's oil. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at buying your stone. The websites, anywhere you look, will tell you how to lubricate the stone, whether it's water or oil. Natural stones are more expensive due to their rarity. They're natural, taken or milled from the earth stones. They're much harder. Some of the benefits and drawbacks are that they're harder, so they last a lot longer, they wear a lot slower, but because the stone doesn't wear with the metal or whatever you're sharpening with, the grit tends to load up with particle. So that's one of the drawbacks in natural stones. Artificial stones can come in many different types. This could include synthetic stones, ceramic stones, diamond stones. All these are artificial, they're man-made items. We'll clear up diamond stones really quick. Diamond stones are coated in diamond just as it says, and they cut really fast because diamond is so hard. Diamond stones tend to not be as good for beginner sharpeners. They cut really fast and they could do damage before you realize what you're doing. I would kind of stay away from diamond stones for a beginner sharpener. Diamond stones also tend to come in lower grits. So in diamond standards, 1,000 to 1,500 grit stone would be an extremely fine stone. And my personal type of whetstone is just a basic synthetic whetstone. These types of whetstones are generally the ones that you'll find on different websites when you search whetstone. They're a much softer material than natural stones, so they tend to wear as you use them. Because of this, they do require more maintenance. They need to be resurfaced, which we'll talk about in another video, how to maintain a stone. But they also don't load up with particles, so as you're working with them, they're constantly creating a new surface, and it doesn't load up with steel particle. Synthetic stones like this are also pretty fairly priced. It's easy to pick up one for the $50 range, which will get you a lower end, but still a great stone. Synthetic stones like this also cut quite a bit slower, so it gives you a little more time. It's a little better for a beginner sharpener. There's a little slower of a learning curve. So probably the most confusing topic for people when they're trying to pick out stones is what grits of stones they need. Obviously this ultimately comes down to how good of an edge you really want. It depends on what you're going to be sharpening. For example, if you're sharpening something like an axe, you generally don't need extremely polished sharp edges, whereas if you're sharpening something like straight razors, you need really, really high grit stones to get that really buttery smooth edge. If someone could only buy one single grit stone, I'd probably recommend something around 1,000 to 1,500 grit. This is going to be low enough that it'll still cut fairly quickly, but high enough that it'll still give you a pretty clean and sharp edge. 1,000 to 1,500 grit will get you shaving hairs off your arm, no problem. If your only stone was, let's say, a 5,000 grit, that wouldn't be much good because it's so fine, it cuts really slow, and it'd take you forever to do any tasks like reprofiling an edge and things like that. Generally, you want two different grits. you want a lower grit for your heavy cutting tasks, your reprofiling tasks, taking out nicks, chips, dents, things like that, which I would go with somewhere between an 800 and 1200. So that'll cut fairly quickly for heavier jobs. Next, you want a higher stone, a polishing stone. Next, you want a grit that's more applicable to honing. So honing just basically means to polish your bevel. For this grit, I would want something from about 4000 grit and up. Preferably between 4 and 8000 grit. If you're getting higher than 8000, then you're going to want an intermediate grit between your 800 to 1200 grit stone. Or again, there's too big a gap and the finer grit will just take you too long to polish because it cuts so slow. Coming back to my stone again, I think this is your ultimate option right here. This is what's known as a combination stone. It's a synthetic stone, but both sides are usable, and it's 2 different grits. So this side, the dark side right here, is this is a 1000 grit. So like we talked about, it's going to be for your heavier work, your sharpening. You want to remove steel. This is going to be your stone. This side right here is a 6000 grit. This will get the polish that you want. This will produce a perfect mirror polish. This is an example of my 6000 grit polish. This is the same 6000 grit polish on a diving Sparrow bushcraft blade. This knife was a gift to me from Forestwalker. The link to his channel will be in the description. Go check him out. This stone is also water lubricated. It's a water stone, so there's no messy cleanup like we talked about. There's no oil. All you have to do is soak it in water for 10 minutes or so before you use it. This stone here will cover pretty much any sharpening task you could throw at it. I use a single stone for my axes, my chisels, my plane irons, even my straight razors. So that's basically it, guys. You pretty much have enough information now to go out and get yourselves your own stones. So just to quickly sum up what we talked about, natural stones are going to be more expensive. They generally cut a lot slower and they're of higher grits. Artificial stones are softer material. They're usually cheaper options and they work really well. They're a really nice option. If you could only have one grit, I'd choose around 1000 to 1500 grit. But generally you want at least 2 grits, something for the heavier cutting, 800 to 1200 grit, and something for polishing, approximately 4000 to an 8000 grit stone. That's it for this video, guys. Please hit the like button down below, guys, and please stay tuned for the next video in this series. Will be actually about getting into some skills, how to use your stone. See you in the next video. One last note, guys, I know you're here for a sharpening video, but if you're interested in some other of my content, check out this video right here. This is a video of me and my wife. We did a little winter hike and a breakfast in the woods. There's bacon. Everybody loves bacon. So check out the video. It's fun. It's nice. One of my favorite videos. Check it out. Thanks.